Good afternoon and welcome to TalkSports. It is our Saturday sports special. A warm welcome to one and all, wherever you are listening or viewing, basically. Yes, so as indicated, our guest on our program this weekend is Mr. Mike Sands. He's the president of the North American, Central American, and Caribbean Athletics Association, NACAC. And Mr. Sands rather is joining us from NASA in the Bahamas. And no stranger to the program, and always he brings a wealth of knowledge. And on this weekend's program, we'll be looking at basically a review of the CARIFTA Games 2025 held in Trinidad. As you know, it is the first time we have seen such in terms of twinning of athletics and swimming on the opening day, and that in itself gave a sort of added interest, seeing the track and field athletes and the swimmers parading together representing their country, their respective countries. So we'll be looking at the whole logistics of hosting the CARIFTA Games, and we look at sponsorship, which is something that we always look at every time we review CARIFTA Games. We'll be looking at that, and also anything that we saw in 2025 in Trinidad that is probably as a blueprint in going forward, and probably some insights as well as to what lies ahead for 2026 with CARIFTA Games and the remainder of the NACAC track and field season in 2025, because certainly apart from the CARIFTA Games, there's so many other activities within NACAC. Let me welcome Mr. Sands. Mr. Sands, good afternoon to you and welcome.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to you and your guest, and thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to join you, Mike.
Right, yes, and Rudy will be joining us from Toronto momentarily, but always a pleasure having you, Mr. Sands. And right off, let's look at the 2025 CARIFTA Games in Trinidad and Tobago. What was the idea behind having both the athletes and the swimmers parade together? It was because Trinidad and Tobago was host of both sporting disciplines?
Well, first of all, let me say this, Mike. First of all, I want to thank the government of Trinidad through the N3TAs that welcomed the games. They took up the gauntlet to host the games. Hosting CARIFTA is no easy task, as you very well know. And so on behalf of NACAC Athletics, I want to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to Trinidad and also to the people of Trinidad and Tobago for a wonderful, wonderful CARIFTA Games. With respect to the co-hosting, I almost want to say, Mike, that I think that was sort of coincidental to the extent to which the games were simultaneously held in Trinidad. As you know, there are not too many member federations that have the capacity to simultaneously host an event of that magnitude. First of all, you must start with the 50-meter pool. I mean, if you really want to do it the way it ought to be done, that's the first thing. Secondly, I think that track and field would have bid for the games several years ago, and they would have awarded it. I do not know that we would have known, when I say we collectively, that the Aquatics Federation was also bidding to host the CARIFTA Games, and they were awarded the CARIFTA Games. Trinidad was awarded the CARIFTA Games. So, be that as it may, it came together very beautifully, I think. And I think what the Sports TT did, obviously, they formed an LOC, a standing LOC, which is something that when you probably speak that bit later on, which is something I think ought to be emulated, because I think Grenada may have done something where there was government involvement to the extent to which it's support. And there's always a very thin line between interference and support. And I think in this instance, the government support through implementing a standing LOC, Grenada did it, the Bahamas does it to an extent, and I think Trinidad did it to another extent. And so there was no need to duplicate efforts. What I understood was that there was the standing LOC, and then Aquatics had the implementation LOC, where they would implement things that were germane to aquatics, and then athletics would implement things that were germane to them. And so together, there was a collective spirit of cooperation that brought it together. And I'll say this, and I think I spoke to it in my opening, right? And I love to quote Nelson Mandela, and I paraphrase him, and he speaks to sports has the power to unite, right? And it brings together, in other words, people, right? And especially young people. And he also speaks to the fact that it speaks to a language that we all understand, that the young people understand. And so I think we saw that at the CARIFTA Games in Trinidad.
I would say so. CARIFTA Games always bring out what we call the Caribbean family, the CARIFTA family. And whether it's the Bahamas, whether it's Jamaica, Trinidad, Grenada, that is what happens around CARIFTA and the Easter. But how would you evaluate the overall success, Mr. Sands, of the CARIFTA Games hosted in Trinidad, both on and off the field?
Well, first of all, again, I think it was a resounding success. And there's no question about it. I believe the results bore out the fact how successful the games were. There were 28 member federations that participated in the games. Bearing in mind that the total CARIFTA family and the CARIFTA family and NACAC family are a little different, because there are some members of NACAC that are not members of CARIFTA. But there were 28 countries, to my information, that competed in the games. 28. We had about 650 athletes, give or take a few. And of the 28 countries, Michael, 20 countries medaled in the games. 20 countries medaled in the games. So when you speak of the success and the participation and involvement, that speaks to the work that the coaches and the federations are doing in their respective organizations. And we had 9 CARIFTA medals that were established. 9 CARIFTA records that were established. And so when you look at the quality of competition that goes on in CARIFTA from inception to the day, and the athletes from our area that have graduated, if you will, or that came through the CARIFTA program, 2 things we can say. One, that the competition is as keen as you can have it. And secondly, the sport of athletics for the NACAC area and for our entire area is in good hands, because all the future stars come through that system. And so I think CARIFTA has to be given the priority that it obviously is given, and more so, and the success that it is experiencing. I walked away from them with a different feeling, because while I've always appreciated and recognized, I think as we all do, the foundation that CARIFTA does to our sport, this one somehow had a different buzz to it, of even that much more excitement to be able to recognize that, we truly have something in CARIFTA, and it needs to be continuously supported so that it does not lose its luster and it does not lose its support, because it is so important to the growth of our area.
Mm-hmm. And while you're on that, what sort of feedback have you received from the athletes, coaches, even member federations, because you would have probably done a post CARIFTA review already regarding the organization, facilities, hospitality, and the works in Trinidad?
Well, as I said, every event will have its little growing pains, little nicks and knacks, but there were no major complaints outside of any ordinary stuff. There was no complaints that I can hold my hat on and say, boy, you have to do a better job at that. And all the feedback was perfect. When I say perfect, A grades, right? For example, I try to make it a point also to experience some of the things that the athletes and the coaches and officials would experience. The kids were put up in Star Hotel. The Hyatt on the one side and the Radisson on the other side. And I went over and I would have had meals, certainly at the Hyatt, just in the dining room with the athletes to experience what the menu was like, right? I would have stand out and watched the movement of the buses. I would have moved around, right, to see the efficiency, the volunteerism, and the hospitality that was meted to all of the participants, the accommodations for the executives, the coaches, the athletes, the transportation, which are the 2 critical components of the games. And then, of course, we normally have the technical meeting the day before the competition starts. And the technical meeting brings in all of the coaches, at least they should attend, so that they get information and they ask questions. If there's anything that is not clear, it is brought up in the meeting the night before, so that they can, make adjustments when necessary. They know what the schedule is going to be like. They know everything, and so it's a well-run organization. And the consistency of it is that we have from the NACAC appointed very specifically is we have an organizational delegate that is appointed by NACAC that works along with the local organizing committee. Then we have the competitions of the technical director, technical delegate that is also appointed by NACAC, and they work along with, not to take away from, but to work along with the local organizing committee to be able to help direct and maintain the standard by which we believe the games ought to be conducted.
Any while we're on that, any operational innovations or improvements this year that NACAC probably may consider standardizing across future editions?
Well, I think one of the things we have done in the past that I think we have to look at is we would have awarded the games to member federations, and then we kind of left them on their own, and I think that was a mistake. And I said earlier about interference and support. I think our past 2 or 3 experiences have shown us that we need to provide more support, more support, whatever type of support we have, whether it's our expertise or whether it's technical, but we need to have more collaboration with the host federation because there are little things that you can, behind the scenes, you may not know it, but those of us that are involved, we can see some things that we've felt that, listen, if we had communicated a little bit more effectively with the member federation that is hosting and not leave them to their own devices, then some things would have been better off. So there are some things, and I put it in a nutshell, I'd say more collaboration and more inclusion, more collaboration with our member federation in particular that will be hosting events.
Okay. And while the iron is hot, any confirmation as to who will host the 2026 CARIFTA Games?
Well, let me put this way, Mike. There's, I believe it's general knowledge because we had a Congress. We also have Congress every year, and we have a NAC. Again, we've done it 2 ways. We have CARIFTA Congress, and then we have the NACAC Congress, 2 different congresses, because CARIFTA Congress deals only with CARIFTA matters. In this instance, at the CARIFTA Congress, unfortunately, one of our member federations withdrew at the last minute, and so on the floor was open for bidders to host the games in 2026, and I would say that we are still waiting for confirmation. Member federations have expressed this interest, and we appreciate the support because at this juncture, believe it or not, that federation is the only one that came forward and offered themselves, and hopefully they will be able to provide the requisite support that will be required to host the games. But I'm looking forward to it. I believe that it certainly will happen. But in fairness to the member federation and some other logistics that they have to work out, I would rather not name them officially at this point. But I do believe you will see something happening in the not too distant future.
Thanks for that. Rudyard, good afternoon to you, Rudyard.
Why are you laughing?
Mike,
Good afternoon.
In cricket, we call that that was a yorker.
I don't, you know me in cricket. I don't know much about cricket, so tell me.
Yeah, I know softball. Softball and baseball.
Certainly, a pleasure.
I can say this much though. I know something about cricket. We're on a good wicket. How's that?
Okay. All right, that's fair enough.
So I think we're on a good wicket for CARIFTA 2026.
Yeah. All right.
No, certainly. A pleasure and good evening to you, sir. It's always good to see you and talk to you.
Yeah.
As we on the CARIFTA hosting for next year, let me ask this question to you right off the back. In terms of in the next few years, I'm talking about years to come. If it do happen, can you have one country hosting back-to-back years? Have you ever thought about that? Is that part of the thought process
Well, I think we may have to look at that. One of the things we've done, right, is that we have obviously gone beyond just year to year. In the past, we would have waited until CARIFTA to ask a federation or put it to the floor who's interested in next year. And I think for long range planning, we have to take that approach. Also, obviously, because of cost associated, at the end of the day, sometime it may be in the best interest, because I've coined the phrase that, well, I didn't coin the phrase, but I certainly use it, and I've been using it more often than not. When something goes wrong, rather than getting really, really frustrated, upset about it, I just say lessons learned, which means that, going there again, we will not make the same mistakes. And so at the end of the day, everything is so evolving. And so we learn lessons as we go along in identifying hosts and supporting hosts, because it's becoming a very, very expensive venture. And when you look at having to, and so the planning becomes that much more effective as well, and more cost effective if a member federation is able to look at hosting the games, consecutively. And that's something that obviously should not be on the realm of our thinking. World Athletics has done it, whereby, for example, you may recall when they first did the World Relays, the Bahamas was awarded the first two editions of the World Relays, and then so precedent is there for us to look at how do we make our games more effective? How do we do more long range planning for the sport? Because the athletics and CARIFTA is here to stay, as far as I'm concerned, and so we must make it a staple event. And I'll tell you something else, right? When I spoke earlier about the number of participants, and I noticed something, and I was saying, have this discussion with a colleague the other day, right? When we want to talk about participation, and we look at the geography of where the event is hosted, and we look at the costs associated, obviously when it happens down south of the some of us, you see what the participation is. So there's something to be had also for consideration when a member federation in those areas express their interest to hosting the games. Now, as I said earlier, the challenge we will have is not too many member federations have the capacity, the room capacity, and otherwise to be able to host the event, because for CARIFTA alone, we had 650 athletes. That does not include coaches, officials, and supporters that would have come into the respective into Trinidad and Tobago just this past CARIFTA alone. So that would have to be a consideration if it can be held simultaneously or alternating weekends. But the challenge again is that the Easter weekend is a traditional holiday throughout our area. It's a common holiday, so it makes it easier to be able to attend the games from family and friends and athletes that are away from school. So there's a lot of things that have to go into the equation when you talk about standardizing something and looking at the benefit, the pros and the cons.
And definitely.
So the whole issue of co-hosting, and once upon a time we had the rotational cycles, north, south, things like that. So do you think that we may have to revert to a new hosting format?
That's what I'm saying. I think we definitely have to have a look, a really post-mortem look, and then there would have to be, obviously, and I spoke really about inclusion, right? I think we have to develop a closer relationship with our sister federations, i.e. aquatics, because if you'd appreciate too that athletics and aquatics, CARIFTA is the major junior competition in our area, and it also has the largest number of participants. I was asked a question in the press conference that we had in Trinidad, and I never really gave it much thought until the question was put to me, so I was kind of caught off guard. But in going through the process of the question was, if CARIFTA grew to its full potential, how would we handle that? I don't know if you and you understand the significance of that. I think they talk in terms of numbers. For example, each country is allowed a maximum of 80 athletes. 80 athletes. Fortunately or unfortunately, they're only the 3 or 4. For example, the Bahamas, I think, had 78 athletes, and Jamaica had 77 or vis-a-vis, and then, of course, the host country. And so when you look at the potential growth of CARIFTA, it could be a frightening thing, even though thankfully that's a process and not an event. And so when we look at how the games can grow, we also have to take in consideration how exponentially the games will grow. This is why I'm saying we need to have a collaborative discussions with our colleagues that also host the CARIFTA Aquatics, and to determine what's the way forward, together.
Um, let me throw in one for you. From Mr. Chenny Joseph, who says, I've always wondered if there is any chance for a Caribbean Grand Prix, given the very tight World Athletics schedule, and does President Sands see any opportunity for games for a lower age group within CARIFTA or the Caribbean? So while you're on that whole issue of the lower age group, which is, we know we have the age group championships and things like that, so Mr. Sands, you can probably segue into the whole issue of the NACAC championship itself, the NACAC senior championship.
Okay, well, to the writer, there's two issues. First of all, the age group championship, and I always encourage member federations to start at that level in terms of we do actually have an age group championship. It is limited, but there is the NACAC age group championship. This year, actually, is going to be hosted in Nicaragua on July the 4th to the 8th, I think, give or take, right? So yes, we do already have an age group that's limited up to, I think, the age of 15. And then there's the under 18, under 23 championships, right? So the age grouping is pretty much covered. Now you can debate whether or not we should increase the number of participants, because each country is only allowed a maximum of 4 athletes, a male and a female, 2 males, 2 females to each category. But that is the starting point. So I think that area is covered. With respect to the Grand Prix, I think we've talked about this before. It would be wonderful to have a NACAC area Grand Prix circuit, and theoretically, it almost kind of exists, but it's not structured because you have events in various destinations. For example, Jamaica, I think, has 2 events. Then we started off with the New Life Invitational. I've always said in my opinion too, that the Whitsuntide Games, even though it's a senior event, I think it's one of the best, a mix of juniors. I think it's one of the best events in our area, having been there and attended it a few times. And so these are things that are there because the calendars are already crowded. And so we need to find a way to, how do we work together collaboratively to bring some structure to how all of our artists in the area can maximize what already exists. And I'm saying structure in terms of, for example, scheduling alignment. But more importantly, Mike and I will continue to say this, and we go back to it again. Financing is a major challenge. It's heart-wrenching challenge that we do not have the finances to do the things that we would like to do. And then when you hear of other events that are given $100,000 for one weekend or for one series meets for our area, it's a wonderful thing because our athletes are benefiting, but then it makes what we try to do look very paltry, to try to attract the names that we'd love to attract, the names of the athletes that belong to us. And I say us, our area athletes that are the creme de la creme of the sport, but we do not have the resources to be able to attract them to some of the events that we have already in the area and that we intend to have in the area. The area championship is a prime example, but I'm sure we'll come to that in a little bit.
Yeah, because I know that is another challenge that NACAC had in terms of looking for a host for the NACAC senior championships. Have that been considered? Have that been finalized, Mr. Sands?
Mike, I am pleased to say that my blood pressure point has dropped about 15 points. But because the answer to your question is yes. As you would know, right, we put out a big document to all of our member federation, seeking a host for all of the events on our calendar. And so it's not like we handpick any. We are at the mercy of the member federations who see the possibility and the opportunity and the financial wherewithal to host it. We had 1 or 2 expressions of interest, and then we had some discussions with it. And then we got to the point where really None of the options are very, very viable for a number of reasons, which I would not wish to disclose, at this juncture. Suffice it to say, through all of that, at the very last minute, I had to make an urgent plea to the government of the Bahamas, asking their support once again to be able to step forward and see if they can assist in salvaging the need for an area championship. And so I'm very, very thankful and humble that the government of the Bahamas, through the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, has agreed to underwrite the cost of the NACAC area championship that will take place in Nassau, Bahamas, August 15 to 17.
Well, congratulations to the Bahamas, always to the rescue. Yeah. So, right. Mr. Joseph comes back with another, question there. Suggestion and question, because he said NACAC should consider having an annual engagement with ministers of sports at the same time during CARIFTA for future planning and development of the games. Now, do you think it's possible to invite except for the Bahamas, because the Minister of Sports of the Bahamas always at the CARIFTA Games. I think it's a part of their schedule that whoever is the Minister of Sports will have to attend the CARIFTA Games, right? And wherever it's held, do you think it's something that NACAC can consider throwing an invitation out to Minister of Sports, by the way, at their cost, to attend the CARIFTA Games and use it as an opportunity where you can have probably on the sidelines, just as how you have the Congress on the Monday, you probably can have the engagement with the Minister of Sports so that, they can be on the same wavelength, and understanding the issues that the member federations are facing.
Well, I believe Mr. Joseph might have been in the room listening, because, that's exactly our next step. Because at the end of the day, you would know, those who were in Trinidad, actually, there were several ministers of sports from the various countries, member federations that supported their teams, right? And I've actually started that type of conversation to suggest that the same way how there's several of us that look forward to CARIFTA in terms of us all athletes, myself and Hazley Crawford and Ephraim Surrett, we look so much getting together as a reunion, so to speak. And so I had that similar discussions with one or two other ministers that we would need to formalize this, because we had at least, I'd say, but other than the Bahamas, I think there were about 3 or 4 other ministers of sports that were there from the various countries. And I'm saying, you know what? Rather than just making this as a haphazard stance type thing, let us plan an annual ministers of sports meeting during the CARIFTA, if it's only a sit-down dinner, and determine how best to go forward. So, Mr. Joseph, now that you expose yourself to being the fly on the wall, I just want you to know that your thoughts, we're on the same page with that. And if I might segue to the point, right? The Bahamas, Mike, you mentioned it, right? The Bahamas is a perfect example, and not just because I'm from the Bahamas, but I say it very without prejudice. The Bahamas is the perfect example that I would like to bring to the attention of those ministers, and I did it informally because I also was able to introduce them to, for this purpose, our Minister of Sports from the Bahamas, right? Because as you know that he was there. In the minister's responsibility for portfolio, it is listed in this portfolio. CARIFTA is listed there, which means that the government of the Bahamas, through the Ministry of Sports, undertakes to ensure that the Bahamas is in full attendance at the CARIFTA Games with the support of the Ministry of Sports and its personnel. There might have been 10 or 15 members of the ministry in a very positive way that attended the CARIFTA Games. As you know, they were divided. Some went to swimming, some went to track and field, and the minister had to divide his time also to both. Our Junkanoo group also had to divide their time to both. So we don't take this very, very lightly. And this is what I'm trying to sensitize our colleagues around the region to understand, that what we in the Bahamas see, we see it as an investment to the development of our young people. And I say this because it's no secret. The government of the Bahamas provides 2 aircraft for its CARIFTA teams. The swimming has its own aircraft to go to CARIFTA, wherever it may be. and athletics have its own aircraft, Bahamas Air, to go to CARIFTA, wherever it may be, at no cost to the federation. So I'm not exposing anything. I'm just saying it factually, and I'm showing how the government has taken it so seriously. And this started back from inception, when we had our first minister of sports and the prime minister, none other than the Cylinder Pinning himself, led the delegation. He was the first person off the aircraft when he landed, wherever the games may be. And I'm saying that is a serious testament to how we should look at encouraging, motivating, and incentivizing our young people to stay on the positive path. And I want to try to bring that to the forefront with the other member federations through their ministries as much as possible.
Well, that is quite interesting. And, you talk about the situation with the aircraft and, with the CARIFTA, with the athletics, remember the athletes will go, and then you have that will go and get the supporters, with the junk canoe, right? So in truth and in fact, it may turn out to be like 3 flights in all, because because you have one for swimming, and then you have the 2 for track and field, the athletes and officials, and then you have the spectators, right?
Yeah, on average, it could be 3, minimum of 3. And in this case, we had 3. The swimming went, and then we kind of do it. And it's scheduled, it's structured. The swimmers went, I think, on the Wednesday. Then the athletes went the Thursday, came down on the Thursday morning, and then the family and friends came on Thursday evening. And there's a method to that. The athletes obviously get in early enough to settle, blah, blah, blah. The parents can take them to the airport, go back and finish their day's work, get on the plane that evening, and meet the kids there and join them in the support. And then on the return, the family flights go first, like that Tuesday morning, so they could be home and get ready for the kids. And during that period, the Tuesday morning or afternoon, the kids would go somewhere for lunch or do a tour for wherever they may be, the island nation that they may be on, visit, do some little souvenirs and stuff. And by that time, they then head to the airport, and then the aircraft is there to take them back home. And then the family and friends are at the airport to meet them when they arrive. And in this instance, we came home a little late, which was we got in about 11:30. And guess what? None other than the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, along with several members of the cabinet, were at the airport at 11:30 at night to greet the team, and the Prime Minister to give them words of encouragement. And this happens all the time. All the time.
Right. Very interesting. Very interesting. I want you to just listen to that, and then Rudian and I will take it from there. This is the president of the National Athletics, Trinidad and Tobago Athletics Federation, Mr. Ephraim Serrett.
It is very difficult, because even to host the games like the CARIFTA Games, which is a regional games, I think we need to look at, and I'm saying we, but as NACAC needs to look at the host country. It's not just having to seek resources from sponsorship locally. As a regional games, I think NACAC should now start to be reaching out to the likes of the different or companies, or through the region to support the games, because it's very expensive to run a games like this. And the contribution, although NACAC president and the World Athletics president continue to indicate that these games are the best junior games in the world, but the contribution is just 60,000 US. It doesn't really add up to that. So we need to get at least more funding from World Athletics and NACAC, as well as host countries moving up to being allowed, or NACAC being assisting to get sponsorship from different organizations throughout the region.
Yeah, I can't say that I disagree with you there, President, because Sebastian Coe, World Athletics President, is always at the CARIFTA Games and always speaks glowingly of the value of the meet, not only to the Caribbean region, but to World Athletics, because he has seen where so many of the athletes transition from CARIFTA Games success to World and Olympic success.
Right. So, Mr. Sands, that's Mr. Serrett, who was speaking with Sportsmax with Mr. Lance Whitaker just after the CARIFTA Games. But the real crux of the matter is the role corporate sponsors play in supporting the CARIFTA Games, and how is NACAC working to expand these partnerships based on what Mr. Serrett is saying. Is like giving the host nation the opportunity to seek additional sponsors.
Well, there's nothing that Ephraim said that I don't agree with. I mean, I agree with everything that he has said. There's no challenge for me on that. Only thing it pained me a little bit when he say only 60,000. I mean, it's a small amount, right? But I mean, a fellow operates within the length of his cable too. So I mean, 60,000. But and let me say this, very carefully, how I so it's not misinterpreted, right? A member federation willing to host the game should not host the games on the basis that they would expect to have the full games underwritten. All right. I mean, it's our contribution towards expenses of the games. I understand it is a very, very small amount, and I accept that. Right. And we accept also that there, as I said earlier, there has to be more collaborative effort between all of us. And so at the end of the day, while the 60,000 US may be small, which it is in comparison to the extent of the game, it shouldn't be being able to host a game predicated on what you would get from there. What needs to happen? There needs to be a process. First of all, if you express an interest, right, you need to ensure that once you put your budget together, and NACAC nor World Athletics wants or expects any of its member federation in particular, to underwrite the cost of the games from its own resources, right? What we look forward to is for the member federation to be in a position to find some entity, be it the government or corporate sponsor or a combination of both, to underwrite the cost, which would mean like the shortfall. In other words, to guarantee the shortfall. So at the end of the day, I think the effort needs to be on both sides. I mean, if you want to host an event, all right, you need to ensure that you have the resources available to host the event, so that so you asked me earlier about hosting, right? We know that the governments have to for the most part, we rely on the governments because we do not have, for whatever reasons, and Mike, we've gone through this over and over and over. Our area does not have the type of corporate support that we'd love to have. I know another area association have one sponsor that gives them, I think, some $4 million a year. Can you imagine what NACAC could get with $1 million a year? Right? And so I'm saying there's something that we're not doing right, and it's an approach that we've taken. I've been speaking to some entities that we are hoping can help us develop a funding model that we can take throughout our area to attract corporate sponsors, to be able to offer them something. I don't know what that something is, but to get them more interested in the work that we do, the athletes that are produced in our area, and the support that is needed for them to come on board to make this area continue to shine. We're successful, not because of, but in spite of, because we can't plan the way we'd like to plan because there's so much uncertainty as to whether or not an event is going to take place. And I just mentioned this now, for example, it was only 2 weeks ago that I was able to convince the government of the Bahamas to support the area championship. And it's not that we have not been trying. And I'm sure the area federations would have been trying too, and were having difficulty getting the support, hence the inability to step forward and say we will host the games. So he hasn't said anything wrong, other than the little $60,000. I mean, that's all I got. That's the widow's mite, But
yeah, Rudian, before you come out, Rudian, yeah, we know it's just $60,000. But so you're talking about this regional sponsorship strategy, putting in place to ensure stable funding, etc. So Mr. Joseph is saying NACAC should consider setting up both an LOC committee and a revenue generation and marketing committee to assist CARIFTA for a 4-year period. This most definitely could assist with some of the challenges currently faced by host countries. So, Rudian? Oh, Rudian, you're muted. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. 60,000. Wow, man, they're complaining. Okay, but certainly, Mike, most of us, we have spoken about that already in terms of the protocol. We never get a chance to really sit down and go into depth about it. But it's certainly something that we talk about in terms of, and you said it right. What benefit can a corporation get from being a part of the CARIFTA Games? It's something that you have to look into, and then put it out to them. So I think that's really what it is the strategy. What is the approach? Because somebody want to come and sponsor this, and what do I get?
Yeah.
One of the things I was speaking with someone, and I said, if we have, I'm just using I just use Grenada Bottling Company. I just used it for an example. And I said, if Grenada Bottling Company sponsor the CARIFTA team, Grenada CARIFTA team, then they get their name patch on the uniform, on the bag. So everywhere they go, it's with the athletes. And so those things, I think it's something that I should see, because I would always like to see every host country, the team have a major sponsor, a home base major sponsor. So you look at Jamaica. In Jamaica, have Grace. Grace could be on the uniform as a part of. Now they go on, and know the advertisement is out there for that company everywhere the athletes go, even when they're running, because now it's on TV. Millions of people seeing it on the uniform. Oh, people see that, so the support can go to them. So there's certainly something that I really think is just how you and your team strategize, helping other countries how to move forward, how to put things together. Maybe you guys may have to help by giving them a letterhead stating that they can use that letterhead to go for sponsorship. So there's so many things that that I'm pretty sure you guys will put together. And I know you are working on it, because it is something that it's been haunting you and having you sleepless night, because it's things that we discussed shortly. We discussed it, but something that you talk about is getting sponsor. We even talk about, like we talk about the major games, like they should have a major sports sponsorship. Like Adidas and Nike, a Puma, those things. But those are still hard to come about. It's just about how now do we approach them, how to approach them, and then what benefit is in it for them at the same time. Because you see, Puma is giving sponsorship to athletes. As long as the athlete run one thing or jump something, they get in a sponsorship. It is time to see how can you now take the CARIFTA Games as the we have people coming from all over the world and saying this is a great games, this is a good game, this is one of the best junior games. And how can now they see that, and we brand that game. So certainly is it's a challenge. It's a lot of work, and you cannot do it alone. You're definitely going to need the help. You're definitely going to need the support. um, but like I said, if we could get organization together that focus on sponsorship to support the various host countries, and I think once that can be done, I think it can be very good.
Well, Rudy, and as you said, you're very, very much how I feel about this, because you and I have had off-camera
Yeah.
this published recently as well. 2 weeks ago, we've had
Yes. Yeah.
on this matter and the way forward, and how do we identify a person. So we have engaged the services of a small company to look at it and to help us develop a plan, a strategy that would seek corporate sponsorship. So we are going in that direction. Resources are limited. I mean,
Yeah.
you almost need a full-time employed person
Sure.
or marketing persons to do this. And at the end of the day, what you see happening for the most part from all of us in the executive, etc., it's like a volunteer, and it's a big business, and so it's not a complaint, because like my wife always said, don't complain, because you know what you were signing up for, so just go ahead and just do it, right? And there's not a complaint. I'm saying it's a labor of love, but it creates frustration, because you know what can happen if you had the available resources. And so while I'm often discouraged, I'm never deterred to trying to
Mhm.
continue along the path that I know that I can see. And I like Mr. Joseph's thoughts, right? Because he sounds like someone maybe with all these thoughts, that come to the table and help us flesh some of these things out. Any support is welcome. because I think we will get there. We will get there. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
All right. So what are the NACAC's priorities for the remainder of the 2025 track and field season, especially regarding athlete development and international competitions? Because I saw an interview where you asked for member federations to start preparing for World Athletics Championship, for example. This is something you said. Be prepared,
Yeah, Mike, on that note, yes, I encourage my member federations to be prepared, simply because there are a number of times when we and not just NACAC, but the federations are late in doing certain things. There's certain terms, conditions, requirements, forms to be filled out, commitments to be made to the governing body or the host member federation. And so I'm urging my colleagues, my members, to please pay attention to deadlines. Please organize yourself in the manner in which is required. I know, as I said 2 minutes ago, a lot of it is of volunteerism, and so a lot of things slip through the crack. But we know what events are taking place. We know the age group is taking place. We know the World Championship is taking place. We know the Congress is taking place. We know the area championship is taking place. So I'm saying, when I say to the federations, be prepared, I'm talking about situations like that. We're talking about preparing the teams, getting the teams entered in a timely manner, and complying with the deadlines so that the athletes are not disenfranchised, because this is what we're in it for. We're in it for the athletes. And so we have to prioritize what is going to benefit the athletes first and foremost, nothing else. And so when I speak to being prepared, I'm speaking of institutional knowledge where I know in some instances federations did not comply and the athletes were left disenfranchised, and there was nothing that I can do. I got a call from a minister last year on another situation with one of the federations in another jurisdiction, and there was nothing I could do because they missed the deadline and the athletes could not have been entered. And this is what I talk about when I say be prepared.
The World Relays. So the Bahamas will be hosting the World Relays in 2026. It returns. No, not 2026.
No, what happened? Sorry, finish your uncle. I apologize.
No. Okay, no. All right, so we'll get to that. I thought they were hosting it in 2026, but the fact of the matter, this year when we had the World Relays, in fact, just a weekend ago or 2 weekends ago, a bit of disappointment, I would say, in terms of representation from the Caribbean, that has, since the World Relays started and when the Bahamas probably hosted World Relays more than any other territories, there have always been a high level of representation from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Cuba, etc., etc., etc. This year, something went wrong, Mike. Withdrawal from Trinidad and Tobago, depleted the Bahamas, Jamaica had a depleted team. What's the situation with our member federations regarding World Relays?
Okay, let me just get a little brief on that. First of all, you indicated 2026 for the Bahamas. The Bahamas was one of the member federations that applied, that sent in the bid to host for 2026 and 2028. The Bahamas was not awarded 2026, but they were awarded 2028.
Okay.
Botswana was another member federation that offered a bid, and they won the bid to host 2026. So the 2026 World Relays will take place in Botswana next year. The Bahamas will have it in 2028. I think there's no secret that the Bahamas has an interest in wanting to be the home of the World Relays. And without prejudice, from where I sit, I certainly support an event of that magnitude being in the NACAC area, be it the Bahamas, Jamaica, Trinidad, or wherever. I mean, we're known for relays. And I'm of the view that when you have a member federation, such as the Bahamas, through the government or any other federation, that is willing to take on an event, and we talked about this earlier, about being able to host something consecutively, it allows for lessons learned, it allows it to be cost effective, et cetera, et cetera. Notwithstanding that, right? What happened this year, again, it goes back to planning in a lot of instances. The But as I understand it, a number of the federations were impacted by the fact that a number of their top athletes at this juncture would be in school, in university, and so may not be available or would not have been available in some instances to field the best teams. Now, I share view that the pathway to the World Championship and the Olympics has to be the easiest pathway by competing in the world relays and coming in the top 8, just getting to the finals. That's the easiest pathway, because after that, there's only 2 spots available per event, and so to be able to try to just be in the top 2 spots for the remaining spots is always very, very challenging. And so, yes, several of our member federations, including Trinidad, the Bahamas, Jamaica, and others that would field relay teams, are going to have a major challenge because they did not participate, for whatever reason or reasons, did not participate in the World Championship that would have given them a pathway to the World Championship. Didn't participate in the World Relays to give them a pathway to the World Championship. And so it's going to be an uphill climb. And this is why I said, again, it goes back to when I say to them, plan, be prepared, because we know when the event's going to take place. We need to try and get the commitment, not barring injuries, we need to get the commitment of our athletes as early as possible. We need to develop better relationships with our athletes, and it's equally important with the athletes' agents, because whether we like it or not, okay, the agents have a major influence over the athletes and what they do. So there's no need to try to develop, to try to be antagonistic with them. And I'm not suggesting there is. I'm just putting out there as cautionary that we need to develop the relationship, because the athletes are guided by their coach and their agents. And while we may want to be real and say, well, this is a national effort, that is true. But you also have to look at what the athlete is doing in terms of their well-being, in terms of their finances, and what have you not. So we have to develop better spirit of cooperation all around.
Mm-hmm. So Mr. Roger Duncan is saying, in the case of Grenada, most of corporate Grenada may have a preference of receiving sponsorship proposals before May 31 for events scheduled for the following year. So I assume if Grenada is considering hosting of the CARIFTA Games 2026, something they may want to consider in terms of putting in their proposals for sponsorship in terms of corporate Grenada before the end of this month, so at least they can be considered for 2026. So, Mr. Sands, as we look ahead to a host of activities for the remainder of 2025, then we have 2026, 2027 Pan Am Games, for example, all the lead up to 2028 Los Angeles Olympics, because it's right in our backyard, as we'll say. How is NACAC positioning the region's athletes and federations for a sort of greater visibility and success?
Well, the intention, obviously, again, as I speak about inclusion and collaboration, right, to have the federations, because they have to be able to identify what their challenges are, the strengths and the weaknesses. We have to do that exercise. And for them to identify their short-term goals, which is like, say, the low-hanging fruits. We know, for example, as you said, I mean, if we look to 2028, which is only a matter of 2.5 years away, so to speak, right? Then you say, okay, what are your plans? And so we need to find out from the federations, let them know what our plans are, and collaboration with them, and to see how it dovetails, and then for us to be able to identify the weaknesses in the member federations to see how we strengthen those weaknesses. But first, we have to complete our own internal SWOT analysis, which is a part of our strategic meeting, our strategic planning that will be taking place. And then we share with our member federations, and then we invite them to share with us what their plans are, so then we can provide whatever support that we can to strengthen them. And so to strengthen each member federation individually, that brings together the whole. And so once you know what you need as a federation, for example, we know that all federations don't have synthetic track. We know that that's been something that's been in the works for a number of years, and we're much closer than we were 5 years ago to ensuring that all the federations, through the availability of World Athletics, is provided with an all-weather training track. So these are then an education, coaching education. Our coaches are doing a wonderful job, particularly the ones that are home-based. When I say home-based, because a number of our athletes train abroad. But also we want to be able to have a regular coaches conference and have maybe some of those same top senior coaches impart some of their knowledge to our junior coaches within our region. And so that would call for maybe like an annual coaches conference as well. I mean, if only to listening and have the young coaches listen to the likes of the top coaches that are producing the top athletes in our area. So there's a number of little small items that we believe we can bring it to the table to make a whole.
Yeah. I like that idea, and I'm certain Rudy and you will love that. The collaboration, the networking of coaches, etc. But they speak about the importance, Mr. Sands, of the collaboration with government, educational institutions, and the private sector in building what I will call a sustainable pipeline for regional track and field. And all of that in light of what's happening in the US, for example, now with, the colleges and all these issues regarding DEI and all this, certainly there's some sort of concern from some of our Caribbean-born athletes, okay, being in some of these colleges, US colleges and things like that. So how NACAC can probably look at collaborating with governments, the regional institutions like the colleges, University of the West Indies, for example. We have the campuses in Barbados, in Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and some of the other offshoots, the satellite places like in Grenada and Antigua, etc., even the college in the Bahamas, working along with these and the private sector as well, ensuring that there's a sustainable pipeline for our regional track and field athletes. So they all do not have to go to the US, but some of them, as in the case of Jamaica, can stay in Jamaica and train. Is it possible they can stay in Bahamas? They can stay in Barbados, or an athlete can leave Grenada and go to not only Jamaica, but probably go to the Bahamas, for example, and have a college education and train as well.
So, Mike, it takes me right back to, where you and I have this discussion sometime back. And again, CARICOM comes right into the mix, okay? And then the meeting of the minds, okay, with the ministers. And so we have to start the discussion somewhere. And we have to recognize and sensitize our athletes to the situation that currently exists in the U.S., to the extent to which that the freedom of movement in terms of opportunities may not be as liberal as it used to be, for whatever reasons. And so that should not disenfranchise or diminish their potential, because it's better to sometimes to be able to stay at home and train at home. But you need a system within our system for competition that the athletes have. We cannot deny the fact that the U.S. system is the most competitive system there is. And so our programs benefit greatly because of the opportunities that our kids get to train in the U.S. But then there are those that may not have that blue chip opportunity. And so this is where the UWIs, the University of the Bahamas and the University of Puerto Rico's and what have you not, will come into play, where again, the ministers, and that's why the meeting with the ministers will be very, very critical, and the same with the meeting with CARICOM, to be very critical to say, hey, we are at risk of doing certain things, but we need the support of the powers that be, which is the governments, which is CARICOM, which is the ministers, right, and the educational institutions, to be able to develop that. And because guess what, Michael, I know we're under the time, right? For example, our high school kids in the Caribbean graduate an average of a year younger than the U.S. college kids, but they go off to university at 16, 17 on average so academically they match wits with the kids of their counterparts in the U.S., but physically they're losing a year of eligibility. And it's a perfect example of that is the fact that all of our kids that compete in CARIFTA, I'm talking about throughout our system now, right? Some of them are still freshmen in universities, which suggests that maybe we have to find a way to develop a high-performance training center that would permit our kids to stay home 1 year more, okay? Maintain their training with their local coaches, get some college preparatory courses, right, and then prepare themselves a little bit more, particularly if you're not getting the freedom of movement to the U.S., which is our major training ground for a number of athletes. These are all the kind of little small pieces that need to come together that I've been having discussions with. But like I said, heavy's the head that wears the crown. And so the more help that we can help to embellish this, the better off I think we'll be as an area, as an association.
All right. Rudian, some comments or at least a question to Mike before we wrap up?
Yes, certainly. I agree. I totally agree with that. In terms of having a program that can develop these kids before them prior to.
Mm-hmm.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we're hearing you, Rudian. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely have some sort of program that, Michael, we spoke about it all the time. Just seeing these kids finishing so young, they go out to college, and then, we hear nothing about them because they're not developed. They're not fully developed, and in a lot of schools now, it's so easy for a lot of schools to
somehow.
Yeah, Mike, we hearing.
I lost connection.
No, we're hearing you, Mike. We're hearing you.
I don't think you're hearing us. Yeah.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and certainly, Michael, I think that's someone we talk about. Like, we see these things in them. We talk about it even in high school, trying to get these kids in them to go back for another year of school, take that second year, or develop a program like Jamaica does. Jamaica have a sixth form. And not all the schools that has it, but they have a sixth form, So instead of, these kids going on and those talented ones want to take 10 subjects, well, they can take 5 now, go back the next day and take another 5. They don't have to go right away, but we have a lot of our talented athletes. We are losing them because of our system in the Caribbean. And specifically we talk about Grenada, our system where the kids finish in high school at 16, 17, and then that's it for them. We are losing them, and they're not physically built for college. Mentally and academically they are, but athletics ability they're not. So they'll go there, and a lot of schools now in universities now, that if you're coming after your first year, if you're not to the level that they would like it to be, you lose your scholarship. And a lot of schools are being like this now.
Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I kind of lost you.
Okay.
It sounded like you took off on the point that I was making about the physical capability versus the mental capability.
So that's So, Mike, so as we wrap up now, what is your vision for the future of the CARIFTA Games and its place within the wider framework of global youth athletics? Because the CARIFTA Games is considered to be the best and most competitive junior track and field championship in the world. So what is your vision as president of NACAC, right, of the future of the CARIFTA Games itself and its place within the wider framework of the youth athletics?
But boy, Mike, there's a saying that says, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. I start this program by saying how proud I am of where CARIFTA is, right? But we just have to do a little analysis of looking at what went wrong and have lessons learned and just continue to try and improve it. I don't see any major drastic change at this juncture that is necessary, but I want to hear from the member federations how they see that we can improve it, because from where I sit, I think we're doing a lot of things right. I would just love to have some more financial support, and I would love to be able to have the games hosted more frequently by other member federations for the experience of hosting the games. But we do appreciate the shortness, the finances, but it also brings a very strong economic boost to wherever the event is taking place. And so I want to be able to use CARIFTA as a model to maximize the tourism, because all of our countries, for the most part, are tourism-based. And if you see what happens with the fan support and everything else, and the entertainment, I want to continue to grow CARIFTA from that experience, so that at the end of the day, it's something that everyone looks forward to happening, not just the Bahamas because we're going to travel somewhere, but that the country's going to host it, for the Ministry of Tourism in those countries to embrace the opportunity to help promote their countries through sport.
Mike, just before you go, I also wanted to ask, I have 2 questions I wanted to ask you. Now, I look at this CARIFTA Games. There was at least 3 athletes who competed at the Olympic Games, and they were competing at the CARIFTA Games. Is that a concern for you, seeing Olympic athletes now competing at the CARIFTA Games?
Or CARIFTA athletes who competed at the Olympics.
Oh,
The other way
yeah, yeah.
No, I mean, when you say concern, I mean, again, it's not. I don't think it's an abuse, because if the athletes are at a certain level, I mean, there's certain events. There's certain events that, as a matter of fact, there's even a rule against certain age groups going beyond a certain point, right? And so, but I don't want them to be forced, right? In other words, if they're there by natural potential, I don't see any reason why they should not be able to compete, if only for the experience of being, because that's where they aspire to be in the first instance. And so if my ultimate goal is to get here, and I got there a little quicker than I expect, okay, I would have achieved some level of success. But then I have to be mindful, not me so much so, but the coach has to be mindful that this athlete's training should still only mirror that of his age category and not try, because he's still growing. And I could tell you, I know I've spoken to 1 or 2 coaches that have had those athletes, and they have acknowledged that they said, boy, Mike, sometimes I forget he or she is only 17 or 18 years old. And sometimes I have to back off of the workout that I'm giving them, because I don't want to really force ride them. If you understand what I'm saying. So I think they should let them go, if only for the experience, to be there, but not to put the pressure on them.
Pressure.
At that level.
Yeah,
And
and
another
things like relays and things like that. So and things like relays.
I mean, it was relays and so forth. But and then another question that there's 2 events. There is a new event, the mixed 4x1, and also the steeplechase. Is that 2 events that will look to be added to the CARIFTA calendar?
Again, of course it is. I mean, the mixed 4x1, because and you know what mixed relays do, not just the mixed 4x1. It gives opportunities for smaller countries that don't have those athletes consistently in that particular event. For example, you have a country that doesn't have 4 top 400-meter runners or 4 top 100-meter runners, but you may have a girl in the So it fits naturally into continuing the growth development of the smaller federations to be able to participate in those events. So I'm all for it. I'm still the steeplechase. I'm still out to lunch on that one a little bit, because I think, to me, if I guess just because it's steeple events and such as hurdles and stuff, I know are very, very, very gruesome events, right? And so I think we have to be careful how we introduce certain events at certain age level.
So here is your final punch before you go, Mr. Sands. I have to give you that one because it's down your alley. Well, what you have been calling for. Mr. Duncan's question is there a mechanism that allows for major sporting organizations such like yours, Mr. Sands, which is NACAC, that provides a channel for you to be consultative to CARICOM? If not, how can your voice be heard at CARICOM?
Well,
well, Mr. Duncan, so sit back and listen to Mr. Sands now.
No, the only way the voice can be heard to CARICOM, since not listening like this, I have to make a direct approach and direct appeal, okay, to the General Secretary of CARICOM, requesting respectfully, maybe putting a few points on the agenda that I would wish to be discussed with CARICOM, and asking, to have an audience with whomever they may be, and start somewhere. At least get to the front desk, and then see if we could get to the boardroom. But the voice has to be heard. The voice has to be heard, because there's no reason why. I mean, if you can talk about the special commissioner on cricket, how did that come about? I'm just saying, again, I ain't knocking cricket. I just want to know how did that come about, and how can we get a voice at the table? That's all I'm saying.
All right. Okay then. Before you go, Mr. Sands, do you have in front of you the remainder of the calendar for 2025 for NACAC, that you can give us an idea of what you have? What's coming up?
I can't pull it up off my head, but I can, like I said, the age group championship is coming up in Nicaragua. Then we have the NACAC area championship. Of course, the world championship is coming up, which is part of our program. Then there's the window where all the area associations will have their national championships that will lead to their qualifying for the world championships in September. And as you know, the world championship will close out the season as opposed to the Diamond League closing out the season. The World Championship would be the last event of the season that would take place September 13th through September 13th to 21st, I think, in Japan.
And certainly, as I see that, Mr. Sands, that having championships now is something that is big with World Athletics in terms of points. I think you get double the points or more of the points, and they're encouraging athletes to be at their country's championship games. So is that an encouragement for countries to have more of have a home-based championship?
Yeah, the reason that came about too is that the World Athletics identify windows for national championship for the countries, right? And then the reason being that, and on doing those windows, there would not be any Diamond League events taking place, for example. So therefore, there would have been very little excuse, if any, for the athletes not to be able to compete in their area championship because of conflict with Diamond League. And so that was a cooperative effort with World Athletics to ensure that the athletes participate in the area championship, and then to award the higher point rankings was also a part of that effort to encourage the athletes. So when you participate in your area championship, okay, your points are far more than any others, and so the athletes that are seeking ranking points, it becomes an attraction to them as well. And as I said earlier too, we would also like we will offer prize money. It's not going to be at the level, but so with the points and the prize money, we're hoping that we'll be able to attract some of our area top athletes. And also the fact that a number of the member federations didn't qualify, we are hoping that at the area championship, they would be able to qualify and they would see the opportunity, which will be one of the last opportunities because the window of qualification is August the 24th. And so finishing on August the 17th, I don't know that there'll be too many other events anywhere else, particularly for relays, that they would be able to qualify. So hopefully Nassau would be the place they would all come to make that last-ditch effort.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mr. Sands.
Thank you, sir. Always. And we will talk, Mr. Sands, more about what we have discussed.
Yes.
Certainly, there is more to discuss and more ways to go about it, but we will certainly have a discussion about that in length and a discussion about it.
I'll see how I could put Mr. Joseph in touch with you. He seems to have a lot of ideas that he would like to float around. Yeah?
For sure. I'll always welcome any opportunity.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks,
thank you very much, Mr.
Thanks.
Sands.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right then. Okay then. That's Mr. Mike Sands, the president of NACAC, live from NASA in the Bahamas. And Rudian, as usual, always a pleasure having Mr. Sands and giving us.
No, most definitely. One thing I like about him, he's straightforward and he speak when he had to. He don't give us details that we're not supposed to have until the time come. And he's an honest man, and that's what we want here on the show. Just come and speak your mind and see what you have to say. And
very cautious in terms of.
No, he does. There's some things you have to be very cautious on, because you got to understand his role, right? Yeah.
We wanted to find out who is your host. But that's it. But Rudy, and just to let you know too that some interesting. Well, this weekend is we have NJCAA. We have a couple of meets, so a lot of the athletes in the colleges participating, and I can tell you
right now, SEC is on, and
we have one. Two Grenadians, I think, that picked up medals today, if I'm not mistaken. I can tell
one pickup yesterday from Georgia. What's her name? The thrower. She got bronze.
The HEP is Gedari. She won she won the HEP, I should say.
Yeah.
Even though, mind you, she fell in the huddles, right? Interestingly, she fell in the huddles. And sometimes that alone can cause a problem, right?
Yeah,
it can throw you off. But she was able to come back and win the overall event. So at the end of day one, she was fifth. So at the end of day one, she was fifth. The woman HEP, Aliyah Gedari, she won the gold, 4,833 points.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
She represented Central Arizona, right? She won the gold medal, 4,833. She fell in the hurdles. She finished what, maybe about 13th overall, 12 or 13th overall, I think, 12th overall, right? She time was what, 17 point something.
But Michael,
So
that's
she
what
didn't
we
get as
do here,
many points,
Michael.
right?
Yeah, Michael. But that's what we do, When we fall, we get up and start going.
Well,
We don't have to.
well, yeah, I think she was.
That's what we do. That's what we do. The
I
hurdles
think
is hard to
I
come
think
back
she
in
was
to
watching.
win
Yeah,
it, but
I think she was. That's something that is very innate about Grenadians now. When they fall down, get up and go.
we get up
Right?
and go. But
Yeah.
that's. Let me say this, Michael. That is also something that is very instilled in her and the coaches that if she's out of that race, she's probably almost out. You miss one of those events, you're done. You're almost like you're done. So the fact that she knows that I need a point and I need to finish, that she continue on, that says a lot because
Yeah.
you have 0 points. It's almost like you are actually done. Like definitely if you're out of one of those events, 7 events or 8 events, if you're out of any one of them, it's almost like you are done. So suddenly she knows that she had to continue, so she get up and continue, which is really, really that's coaching right there.
Right. So some other good news. Jamora Alves, as you know, my girl from Carriacou, right? She represents St. John's University, and that is in the Big East Outdoor Championships. She finished second in the women's shot put, 15.24 meters, and that was yesterday. And today she won the women's discus. So she had a silver medal yesterday, and then she got the gold medal
You
today.
got the goal, yeah.
The goal is in the women's discus, 54.30 meters. So
Okay.
Jamora Alves, silver and gold and silver, right? On the weekend. And then we also have information that Isaiah Patrick and Michael Francois will be competing today. Yes, thank you very much, Quincy.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Today. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have quite a few people performing today, competing today. So do look forward to some of those results. We'll be following all these things. As you know, championship weekend, right?
Yeah.
This weekend,
For sure.
and things like that. So we'll be following all of that. Michael, were you able to give Mr. Sands his branded TalkSports T-shirt or mug? I'll probably get one to him. I'll probably get one to him. I'll get one to him. I'll get one to him. So don't worry about that. Yeah. But so Rudian, so that's in terms of some of our athletes competing. I'm looking to see. Oh, and then we had a couple of our athletes who graduated over the past, especially from the junior colleges. So we're looking forward to them being in the being at universities in the next season, I should say.
Next season, yeah.
Yeah.
You go through the portal and then they just get in, for sure.
Yes, yeah. So folks, that's all for this weekend. Next weekend we should be talking some basketball. We have two exciting Grenadian basketballers. They should be in Grenada. I think they're getting ready to host a clinic in the next few weeks, and we'll be talking about. One of them graduated from Penola College, and then we have one who is going into which university we said again?
Indiana State.
Indiana State University. Yeah, you know that NCAA top notch. We'll be talking.
Indiana.
We'll be talking to him about that, right? So we'll be talking to these two exciting basketballers. They are part of the Kellen Batiste Foundation, and we'll be talking with them and talking about all that's happening with the Kellen Batiste Foundation, because the Kellen Batiste Foundation is not only about basketball. It just happened that they have two basketballers now.
Basketballers,
football, track and field, sports in general, right? The Batiste, and it's all in honor of the late Kellen Batiste, who was a former Grenadian goalkeeper, national goalkeeper. And the Kellen Batiste Foundation has been doing quite a bit in terms of sports and development of sports, especially in the youth. right? Let me see. Thank you, Quincy. He says 4606 from Jared Sylvester this week as well. As you know, Jared be doing quite well. And you know, Rudy, and we've seen a lot of our young quarter milers just outside of the 45. We want to get them into the 44, right? In the sub 45, because to be very competitive now, you have to be in the
You have to be. You got
sub
to. I mean,
45. Right?
the
Yeah.
standard is 45 point, I believe now. So
Yeah. So you have to, but I mean, it's interesting, and it's encouraging as well, because what I'm seeing there too, and I keep saying that, is that if we have quite a few guys who are just outside of the 45, it means that we have a pool, we have a cadre of athletes who can be competitive, or we can start looking at the relays, etc., etc. Look, Botswana, for example, right?
yeah. Oh, look at Botswana.
Their top
Yeah.
athletes missed out on, for whatever reason, you know, they missed out on the world relays, but they were able to do well, right? Because they have so many of these young, exciting, and competitive quarter milers.
For the milers. Oh yeah.
Just outside of the United States, I think Botswana and South Africa, they have the most competitive
Most
quarter milers,
component. Yep.
right? And they were still able to do well in the 4x4.
In the 4x4, yeah.
Yes,
And 4x1. And they come in with the 4x1, and they come in. So they're coming. They're coming.
And
They're coming.
their top athletes missed out on the, well, they said they boycotted whatever because of whatever issues they had at day. But look at that, they fielded probably a B team, and they were able to do well, you know. So these are the things that we have to look at. So if we have these athletes, a cadre of athletes that are being competitive in the just outside of the 45 point and things like that. So we have the Jared, we have who again, you know, we have, well, I don't want to keep naming.
We have a few of them. We have a few of them.
Right?
We got quite a few of them.
And then we have a couple of athletes as well who can do a 20 point in the 200.
In the 200.
Right? Yeah, 20 point in the 200. Right. So okay, so those guys are running now. So Quincy is giving us some updated. He says 45-4 for Michael Francois. 45-4, Michael Francois.
We'll just talk about it.
Just talk about that. That's the sort of thing. So when you see that sort of
well, that's World Athletic Standard right there.
That's what I'm saying, right? Seeing that there, right? And then we had Felix, right? We have Felix again, who is doing well. Gamali Felix, I'm speaking about, right?
Yeah.
So we have a cadre of athletes, I believe, that that we can use, as they keep saying, you know, relays, you know, that. Probably the opportunity to expose them. That's what I'm saying.
It's time. Yeah.
Is the availability of those guys.
And that's what it is. It's all about availability too. But then they have to put them together and get them into qualify just before the deadline, because there are still spots open for that 4x4 team. And those who are the world relays, you know, and have the time they get through, but then there is some more spots that's available for the top 16. So certainly, you know, it's not impossible. But congratulations to you, Knicks, making it through to the you know. I certainly, you know, so it's so funny, Michael. I start the year when the playoffs start, and I say it's going to be the Golden State Warriors and the Knicks in the finals. And Golden State Warriors is out, and the Knicks is still struggling. So I'm still hanging on.
My issue is whether or not they'll be able to carry it right through, right? I know. It has been a long time coming.
Very long time coming, boy.
A long time coming. But
the last time was what, Patrick Ewing?
Well, I think it's 20
Patrick Ewing.
Years,
25 years or something like that. Yeah.
It's a long time.
Right?
They have some of the diehard fans who probably they were not even born when they.
Yeah. And they have some that's been waiting. Spike Lee been waiting for so long. Like, you know, that is suddenly, you know. So
there are those who gave up already. You know, they gave up. They had watched. You know, they had said, "Hey, those guys ain't going that fast." You know, but it's
and they have home advantage. So that is a plus.
Going into that,
that is a plus.
What's interesting is that to eliminate the defending champions, right?
Yep.
That's what make it thing. Because at one
That
point
that
in
is the
time,
big one.
I thought that Boston, the Celtics will,
No, it's hard,
you
but
know,
Michael, you go down 4, you go down 2-0.
uh,
It's tough. It really doesn't matter what you say. It is tough because I mean, you look at tonight. Minnesota is sitting waiting, and then you have those two teams battling in Game 7.
yeah.
They'll be beat up. There'll be some bruises
That's
too in that game.
and that's the problem, Rudy. I think sometimes when you go down to the wire,
Yeah,
Game 7, and then
you give him
your
everything.
opponent just there waiting for you, right? I
And then
think
you come back and to go to another 7 games if you get to that. This is you, and then you go to another 7 again after that for the championship. So your body is going to be beat up, you know. So, but it's good to see that. Like I said, certainly, yeah. I don't know. It's yeah. I don't know. Uh, Roger is. I don't know. I don't know, Roger. I don't
well,
know.
it depends on
I
the
mean, that
because
depends. Yeah.
because you have the athletes themselves who, whether or not they still in, well, they have not peaked or whatever, because in a Grenada setting, for example, with local athletes, right, traditionally after the Whitsuntide Games there are no other sporting, I mean, track and field event in Grenada.
Events. Yeah.
Whitsuntide Games will be more or less the last event on the calendar, right?
Hmm.
Whatever it is, whether it used to be, for example, intercall, and then after intercall, you wait until Whitsuntide Games, right? Now you have a couple events in and between, and things like that. So, and probably going forward, we'll see a lot of the clubs having the various meets and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to
Um,
keep them active. You have to.
I
Um,
don't know whether or not past Whitsuntide, that's past June, whether local athletes themselves will still be in a competitive,
yeah.
position.
Well, it's so funny you say that, right? And he asked this question because like I coach my athletes from St. Vincent, and yesterday we talked, and she said she received an email from St. Vincent that their championship is the end of July. Sometime roughly the end of July, and then I said okay, and then we're looking at the next meet will be the area championship game now in Bahamas because we were trying to figure out where it's going to be, and it's good timing and everything still, right? In August, and I'm saying like now you got to put yourself in a position where how do you balance yourself? When do you peak? At what point do you peak? Do you at what? Because even after the area championship game, you're looking at what, another 3 weeks to almost a month before the next competition, right? So before the world championship. So and you're right. It's then it's right into carnival. It's almost like some of our athletes have to stay away from Grenada, for carnival during the season. Or if they are in Grenada, don't play a job. But so it's something like it's a hard one to say, and you can see these guys in them is running very well. But they are picking college because that's what expected from them. And that's the difference when you're in college and when you are with a club and a sponsor and everything like that. That makes it a lot different because you have to peak and then pick again, which is really hard to do. That's why a lot of the college athletes don't perform as well at the World Games because they are either burned out, they pick already, and there's nowhere else to go. They can't get faster, but the only way they go is going getting a bit slower. So sometimes when they get to there, they are exhausted, they're tired. By the time they get to an Olympics or a World Championship, because they're tired,
Yeah.
right? Because
That's
they're
true.
tired. So and that's why a lot of them. That's why you kind of admire with Jamaica, where you see a lot of the junior kids now either taking a sponsorship where they can, one, support their family, two, they can stay with their coach and they could work things out. go to school there as well. Because once you go away, again, unless you are the school that who have that understanding, but again, how many schools that have that understanding? They want to win a conference because it's financial for them, right? So they want to win conference. They want to make you run the 2 and 3 races, and they need to pick because you know to win at that level you have to pick. You know, so yeah, it's a tough one. It's a hard decision in this time with
Yeah.
athletics. In the past, it was okay, but in this time that we're living in now, it is really difficult. It's a difficult, choice to make. Small nation as like we said, as Grenada, do you encourage kids to stay or you encourage them to go? There's nothing for them, but a place like Jamaica, where they have a system, they have something in place. A lot of these guys can go, but long as they can get sponsors, and that can support them 100%, stay with your coach, do what you have to do. But once you have to go away, the schools are in charge of you then. You can't say you're not competing. You don't have that say, right? So
All right. So just to give you that update regarding, so it's an NJCAA, so second gold medal for Grenada. NJCAA men's 400 meters. Michael Francois, representing Iowa Western Community College, 45.40. Tavon Davis, also of Hines Community College, 45.40. But went down to the nearest 10th, and Michael Francois will be 45.391, and Davis was 45.393. Right? Oh, so that was tough. But Francois won the gold medal in the 400 meters, 45.40. So he's the NJCAA Division
AA
1
championship.
outdoor 400 meters champion for 2025. And then we already had in the HEP, we had Aliyah winning the gold in the women's HEP. So congratulations. We'll be following and see how many other following the performances of our other Grenadian athletes throughout the weekend. Right, Rudian?
Yeah, certainly. We did talk about what's her name? Out of Georgia. She came third in the shot put, women's shot put. Let me pull it up here. Miss Ross.
Kelsey.
Kelsey. She threw 18 and she was third at the SEC, so that's good. So that's a good thing. Another Grenada bronze again.
The SEC this weekend?
Yeah, SEC this weekend.
Okay,
today's the last day. Yeah. So that's another bronze once again.
SEC this weekend.
Yeah,
right. So we have the
SEC
that's
it's really good.
in Lexington, Kentucky.
In Kentucky, in Kentucky, in
right?
Kentucky, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's good.
The women's discus throw is now taking place. I see it just showing up there now, the women's discus throw. But as you said, she won was it the shot put, right?
Yeah, she won the shot put. She comes third in the shot put.
Oh, in the shot.
Yeah. It's so funny how they do this stuff.
Right. 18 meters. Right. 18 meters. That's who's best. 18 meters. Kelsey Morel Ross, representing Georgia, and that's and she's a senior, right?
She's a senior, yeah. She's at Georgia, yeah.
Right.
And I don't know if she do. Did she throw? I don't know if she threw anything else.
No, that's what I can't say.
All she do. All I know she do is that shot put. Yeah, that's all I know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because I didn't see her name either in the discus. I was looking to see if I see her show up in the discus.
Yeah,
but I didn't see her in the discus. So it seems as if there's a shot put. I don't know. Sometimes they allow them to do the hammer and things like that. So, but
they do. But I don't see her in no other event. That's women discus throw. I mean, the discus. I don't see her name here for the discus throw.
For the discus, no, I haven't.
Yeah, her name is not there. Yeah, so and they just started too. So Actually, there's nobody from Georgia. But it seems like, when you talk about sport, look at Georgia is like almost there to win the women in for the first time in a very long time because, I don't know, Arkansas is nowhere to be found lately. Nowhere to be found. But Georgia is leading. Ole Miss is leading in the men so far after 21 events. So a lot of the finals is coming up now. So let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
All
right,
right,
then.
man.
So thanks very
Until
much
next
again.
week,
We'll keep in
definitely.
touch and
Yeah, we'll keep in touch.
we'll keep our fans
Yeah.
in June, and yeah, we have Jamara Patterson
Jump Patterson
in the
finishing
final on
53.
Sunday with 53.79, right?
Yeah.
So remember, we have
Yeah.
Jamara Patterson, right? Right.
Yeah.
So we'll be following
Yep.
all of that. Thank you
We'll be
very much,
following all of
Kingsley.
our athletes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that, man.
Right. Thank you
Yeah.
again.
So, all right. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Until then, again, have a good one.
Okay then. Same to you. Right. Yeah. Okay then. So folks, that's all for this weekend. Looking forward to your company come next weekend. We'll try to keep an update as to the progress of our athletes this weekend. A lot of them competing, as you know. We already spoke about Aliyah. Then we have Jamara, Michael Francois, Jared Sylvester. Quite a bit of those athletes are competing. Not all won medals, some of them commendable, but we'll be keeping tab on them, right? So we look forward to your company come next weekend, God's willing, where we have another program. This time we'll be talking some basketball and be talking about the Kellen Batiste Foundation, right? And all about what they're doing in terms of development of sports, young people in particular, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's track and field, whatever it is like that. So until then, do have yourself a pleasant week.